Welcome everyone back to the Gothic Heart. Today, I'm extremely excited to feature Lisa Dare. She is with me, and she is a professional coach that helps with leadership development and communication effectiveness and strategic planning, all the things we can use in a career and in a work life. We've been focusing so much on ourselves, which is absolutely important, but we also need to focus on how we can help others and grow teams, especially in what type of work we might be on. So here's where we bring Lisa in, who's going to help us uncover those mysteries. All right. Hey, it's Amity, welcoming you to the Gothic Heart, where we explore how to fully embrace your Gothic and alternative self in love, life, and everything in between. Whether you're navigating the dating scene, in a relationship, or celebrating your individuality solo, this is your spot for tips, inspiration, and my own journey from a courtroom attorney to a hollow wedding host. So grab your favorite drink and let's dive in. So thank you so much for being here, Lisa. I'd love if you could do a much better introduction for yourself than I just did.
Well, you did a pretty good job, Amity, and thank you. I'm absolutely delighted to be here, and I love that we're both in the same time zone. I don't often get
nice.
that. I feel like Pacific and Mountain is kind of like way on the other side of the time zone. So it's great that we're actually in the same time zone. So
yes.
Yeah. So really, I think in terms of what you just shared as a coach, and in particular, my focus is, as you said, around leadership development. And I've recently just adopted the title of leadership practitioner. I think because, as a practitioner, it's really about being a craftsman, right? Like there's an art and a science to coaching. And I think when we really embrace it as a craft, there is this constant, or certainly for me anyways, there is this ongoing desire to continue to improve. And part of that is learning. It's also my own journey, right? What am I doing to continue to show up in a way that's meaningful and effective for my clients? And it's also about really staying on top of what's changing and evolving in the world, right? As you said, one of the first things we'll often talk about as leadership practitioners is that focus on self, because it really starts with awareness around self. But of course, the other piece is, now how do I start to articulate that, right? How do I start to bring that to the surface and show up in ways that's going to be effective and meaningful for the people that I'm working with, that report to me, right? And the people that we serve, right? So, and as you said, that covers a whole spectrum of things. And I think, in particular with communication, you and I were just talking about that as we were getting settled. And that I think is a fascinating area, right? Because we take it for granted. We take for granted if we both speak English and I'm speaking to you, you know exactly what I meant, right? And yet how many times have we seen in situations, both personal and professional, where the communication just goes off the rails, right? It's like, well, like, I thought you understood, like, I can see that on your face, right? It's like, I thought you knew what I meant, right? It's like, no, I thought you meant X, right? And so for me, what's really fascinating about that as a leader is, I think when we have awareness about ourselves in terms of what are my preferences, and then more importantly, what are my biases, then I become more effective in terms of how to meet others where they are. That's the phrase I use a lot, Amity, is how do we learn how to meet people where they are, right? Because you know what? It encompasses a lot of things. So that's a big part of, I think, how leaders can become more effective in leading is, first of all, knowing self, and then not only knowing others, but accepting others as they are, not wanting them to be a certain way. Like I think about, that film, I'm probably dating myself. My dad loved musicals, so he loved My Fair Lady, with Audrey Hepburn, right? Where he, Henry Higgins turns this Cockney flower girl into somebody that they think is a, royalty. right? But it was this whole like Pygmalion effect, right? We tend to start to see people the way that we envision them to be without really letting them be who they are.
100%. And that's like every 90s teen movie, at least when I was growing up, were versions of that, right? Oh, they're different. They have different interests. Well, let's turn them into this, makeover montage. Perfect. I mean, I'm immediately thinking Clueless in my head, right? But it's not who she was. But I could not agree with you more. And listeners of the Gothic Heart or people that grow up with different interests, doesn't have to be Gothic, spooky, vintage. It could be any sort of interests that are not considered stereotypical normal. We've all experienced it, that people, parents, friends, schools, well, you've got to do it this way, or this is the way it has to be done. And same with work. I've been in management for more than 20 years, a long time. And meet them where they are is exactly my favorite practice. Been in, management classes, read so many books, etc. But meet them where they are. I could not agree more. And the way I'm interpreting that, tell me if I'm wrong, is, let's say you're managing 4 or 5 people, right? And this is how they do it in classrooms. They teach to the lowest level, right? To the lowest person that's not understanding. And people get bored who already do understand. But of course, that person needs to understand too. Well, the beauty, at least in a team, hopefully, is either you can break them into groups, or you can, let's say someone's been there 20 years. Do you need to watch them like a hawk? They've been doing well, but someone's brand new, right? We're not going to treat those people the same way. And that's the way I'm interpreting meet them where they're at. Be open to that instead of just coming in with well, this is the agenda. This is the way that they told me I have to do this stuff, because that's going to either, well, I had a manager like that once, and I learned exactly what I don't want to do. I did still learn what not to do, right? And the good thing, at least the lucky thing, I think, for the people that listen or, grew up with a more, different music taste or different decor taste or clothing taste, etc. I feel, of course, maybe I'm stereotyping, that we tend to be a little bit more open to other ideas because we've just naturally had to be, because people were taking us away. So hopefully this coaching experience from you or your advice will be, fingers crossed, easier for us to comprehend about how to meet people where they're at. And I'm really excited about your communication, because what you said is, they hear something else. Oh my gosh, can't tell you how many times that is. And then the worst part is nowadays, email or text communications. I mean, how many times does that not come off how we meant it to if we had done it in person? So, and Fierce Conversations is one of the best books I feel like I ever read as a manager. So,
Susan Frost. Yes.
Yeah. So, I'll link all that stuff for people below, but like how to, there are lots of tough conversations that can be had. And this can be applied. Obviously, we're talking in a work context, but also some of us have to end up having those with peers or family members or something. So I know I just talked forever because I was bringing in my experiences, because of course, every guest I bring on, I'm excited about. It's for me, really. So, but now I'm going to turn it back over to you so you can, those are just my personal experiences, but you are the expert, so you can expand on that for us. So,
yeah. So I think, first of all, a couple of things. I'm going to challenge the notion that there is normal. Yeah. Right. Because it's like, what is normal, right? It's like normal is just something that a group of people that had a voice and power decided was appropriate, right? It's like, well, I'm sorry, like really, what is normal? Right? It's like, we know that quote unquote normal, for example, has really impacted gender bias, right? Boys should not like pink, right? Girls should play with dolls, right? Like, you're a girl, you should be a teacher, right? Boys become engineers, right? Like, we can see how those like normal definitions impacted us as a society, right? As a species. Right?
And we're getting so much better. Don't get me wrong. We are growing. Yes.
Yeah. But I think it is, recognizing that, absolutely, right, Amity, part of meeting people where they are is calibrating, adjusting to, what are the what is reasonable to expect from this individual, right? As you said, if I've got somebody who's a 20-year employee, they could be a mentor, right? They could be this person who, takes somebody else under their wing. They become the person who's the trainer that onboards people, right? I look to them as a subject matter expert.
Yes.
I think also meeting people where they are, Amity, is about first and foremost a mindset of accepting those differences. One of the things that I talk about, because I like to geek out on neuroscience, because my background was as a pharmacist, which is, the perfect background to become a coach. But, we know that the brain is wired to keep us safe, right? So it's constantly surveying our environment. And so we see that manifest in things like, if I see something different, it kind of weirds me out, right? And the brain goes, ooh, that's different. Like, probably not good. Prepare for something bad to happen, right? And so I think one of the biggest challenges we have and leaders have is really being aware of and intentional about counteracting some of that. So in other words, I see somebody doing something different, right? Or they didn't behave in the way that I thought they should, or they're not figuring this out as quickly as I thought they should. All of those might raise signals of like, okay, not working out. But meeting people where they are is also about coming with a mindset of people are different and that's okay, right? That different is good. Instead of saying different is not good, right? We're not the Borg, right? We're not here to become the collective, right? It's like, we don't need to be, right? We don't need to be absorbed into one big thing, right? We don't need to
How boring
coalesce.
would that be?
Exactly, right? So I think a big task that leaders have, Amity, is really challenging their own beliefs, their mindset, right? Do I go into leadership with a mindset of being in service, of helping people to grow and develop? It's okay to have an ego, right? Having, I heard a Jungian psychoanalyst say it's okay to have healthy narcissism, but when that becomes like megalomania, right, or when it becomes my way or the highway, what's that doing to people, right? And what's that doing to a team? Right. So that's, one of the things I think that's fundamentally important is for people to really think about what are my values? What are my beliefs? What are my attitudes? What are my unconscious biases that might be impacting my behavior?
God, could not agree more. And especially when it becomes my way or the highway, that's absolutely serving nobody, much less the bottom line of your business, which is why you bring on people and want to coach them to be leaders for your business or for whoever you work for. But what I was thinking when you were saying that is when people didn't act the way I expected or do something the way that I expected, instead of coming right down on them, I was always curious. That's what I was always training my people to do. Well, let's get curious about that. Well, why did you do it this way? Like, maybe I'm about to learn something really cool. The way when people are different, brains work differently. We learn better or more creative or faster or different ways of doing things. Gosh, that happens pretty much every day, even in what I do now, custom fine jewelry. I'll talk to another jeweler and be like, yes, that's great. Like, one person does not have all the answers. So getting curious is what I was always trying to do when my mind would be like, that's not what I said. Okay, but wait. Let me get curious about why.
I think that, I love that. And absolutely, right. I find that a lot of my leaders I think one thing, for example, that I find is interesting is that transition from when you're sort of a senior person into a manager role and then to a leader role, right? Because those are big leaps, right? And I don't know if you saw this in your career, Abby, but what I often saw was the people that got promoted were the ones that performed well, but they didn't necessarily make good people leaders. Right? They were really good at their jobs, at what they did. And I can use my own example of being in pharmaceutical sales. You had really good reps that, knew how to sell, performed well, but then you put them into a manager role and they struggled, right? They just couldn't connect with people, right?
Or thing.
Right? It was not their thing. But it's this whole, again, another myth that, well, you performed well, so now we're going to reward you by, right, promoting you. But it's a different set of skills. And it is, I think, to your point, curiosity is so powerful, right? If I can be open to learning new ways, right? Or being open to the fact that I don't know everything, right? Because I think that's the other thing that sometimes people impose on themselves as leaders, right? It's like, I had a client say this, well, I don't share, I used to shield my team from things because I thought I should get it figured out first. And then she said, maybe I should actually share with them what's going on because we could actually come up with some different solutions. And it's like, absolutely, right? You don't need to know all the answers.
100%.
Yeah.
That's why you have a team, right?
Yeah.
They're there to, I mean, you support them, they support you. I think 100%. And a lot of times the manager doesn't always know. I mean, most of the time, the manager doesn't always know how to do all of their people's jobs. So, but like to your point, just because someone's performing well doesn't mean they're the manager. I mean, I do feel that the best managers do learn every single role, so they're able to help various people, but that's not always the case, and they can still be effective. In my experience, it's really people work for people, right? Someone could be in the exact same role, maybe at a different branch, and hate their job and love their job. It's the same company, the same culture, the same values, but how is their boss or their leader or the culture in their branch being? It's make or break. People work for people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, the other thing too is the distinction between managers and leaders, right? So the definition that I've often worked with groups and clients around is that managers get work done by people. Leaders get work done through people. So I'm thinking, for example, of, and I don't remember his name, but the fellow who owns Chobani yogurt, right? Because he gets talked a lot about in leadership circles. And, his whole model is around servant leadership, right? Mm-hmm. Treating people the way that they want to be treated. Not the way that we want to be treated, because I think that's the other piece of meeting people where they are, right? Is we often say the golden rules, treat people as you want to be treated. It's like, well, no, actually, how do we know that they want to be treated that way? It's like they have their own way of wanting to be treated. And so, when you have people that can inspire through vision, who just, you just want to show up at work because you just know you've already bought into what they see as the bigger picture and where they want to go. And that's leadership. Whereas the manager, to your point, is the one that comes and says, so did you take your lunch break today? Did you, did you do your, did you get this report done? Right? Did you do the bathroom 3 times today? Right? It's like
the agenda.
Very transactional versus leaders can actually really transform people and organizations.
Yes, they can. I have seen it firsthand. And so we've definitely talked about, okay, and I really like the way you define management versus leadership. I think that's a very good way of explaining it and describing it. So we've got that piece, right? Or we've talked about that piece. So then how do we transform communication style to be effective, right? To not be just that transactional manager, but to learn to inspire or to grow and develop future leaders?
Yeah, so I would say there's a couple of pieces to it, Amity, and I would say one of the most foundational skills that we can all be cultivating, and in particular for effective leadership, is listening. We all take for granted that we're good at listening, right? But I think, again, the distinction between hearing and listening. So if I have the ability to be able to hear, that's really just a physical process, right? So I can get all geeky and say, that there's sound waves that travel in the air, right? And it's going to hit all the mechanisms in our ear and it's going to just get translated into some form of sound or speech. But listening is really a multi-sensory process. It's not only what I've heard, and in fact, often what I've heard is such a small percentage of what the message really is. What am I noticing in terms of body language? What am I sensing energetically? Right. I can sense if somebody, if I said something, what kind of impact is that having? Right. So it's noticing all the other aspects that happen when we're communicating. So first and foremost, it's about asking ourselves, am I an effective listener? And to be an effective listener, to your point, part of that is to be open-minded and curious, right? If I go into that conversation already thinking something about Bob, let's say, right now, dear God, I'd have to have another conversation with Bob because, he's the problem child of our team, right? I'm already going in there with some preconceived notions. Bob could be actually providing a really good explanation as to why he's struggling with something, but I'm just thinking, blah, 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 Bob, you're a problem, right? Versus,
Yep.
I really want to be able to, from this conversation, understand how I can get Bob to, perform better, right? Or to learn this new skill. So which also means that, dare I say, that we as leaders need to also bring empathy and compassion into the workplace, right? And I know that, there's been in the past kind of the business is business, personal is personal, but if we don't actually show our teams that we care about them, are they going to really care about the work that we're asking them to do or what we're trying to achieve as an organization?
Oh, no. Oh, sorry. Listeners, I was shaking my head. Nope.
Yeah. So I really feel like, Amity, it's the listening piece. And then I think, we've got great resources and tools. One of the tools that I love to use is a very simple assessment tool called DISC. And it's actually just, and people can, and I can share with you a link that people can, your listeners can go to use, to look at this Amity. But it's a very simple one that helps people to understand. There's 4 different categories, and it helps people to understand how do people process information, how do they like to receive information as a result of that, how do they tend to communicate, right? So for example, right, the D is for dominance. Ds tend to be people that are very sort of like quick, need just the facts, move on, right? Very goal driven, right? They might come across as very abrupt, right? Because it's kind of like, we joke, right? They're the ones that say be bold, be bright, be brief, right? Like, right? Because you're like, my God, it's been 30 seconds. Are you done yet?
But I was pointing at myself because that's very much me, and something that I've worked on my entire career is learning to care about the why, explain the why, because to me it was, hey, this is what we have to do, just do it, right? So that's something I've worked very hard at my career. So I love that you're bringing that up.
Yeah, no, which is awesome, right? And I think that's such a great example, Amity, of people sometimes will say, well, that's just the way I am, right? And it's like, well, if you're aware of it and you consciously and intentionally work on it, you can modify it, right? To a certain, I mean, I'm not saying that, you're still probably very goal oriented and you're probably still very much like, let's get her done, right? But you can now moderate that a bit, right? To sort of go, oh, I'm talking to somebody
I'm more
who's
effective. Versus 20 years ago when I didn't realize that. And I was just like, why wouldn't you just do what we're supposed to do, right? Versus, later on in my career, as I'm learning, well, this is the why behind it. And this is the results we can get if we do it, right? That may not be something I need to go, but it's things most people need to understand to get on board, right? And then you get the results you're looking for. And it's just a tiny tweak. It's something that I am always, even to this day, having to remind myself, though, to do for people who need that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, sorry. So that was only D.
Yeah, that was only the D, right? So we have the I that are the influencers. So they tend to be sort of the creatives, right? And others might go like, oh, they're kind of the flaky ones that can't decide on anything and they just think everything's wonderful, right? And then you have S, which is for steadiness. And those are people that I'd say are kind of like the workhorse of a team, right? They're there in the background. They're like, tell me what to do. Leave me alone, it'll get done, right? And they're usually the people in the group that everyone goes, like, I just love Joan because she just listens so well, right? Because they're very, right? They're connected to people, but they like to just kind of do their thing. And then you've got the C's that are very, sorry, Amity,
No, I was just thinking when you're saying the S, in the 9 spot, do you know the 9 spot blocks, like when you're trying to figure out where your people are versus, well, anyway, they're the 5s. They're right there. They're in the middle. Your steady workhorses. They're not looking to promote. That's not their thing. But they, yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. Okay.
Yeah. And then we have the C's, which are for conscientiousness. So really the hallmark of the C is they're very analytical, right? Think accountants, right? Engineers, right? They're very much like, they're likely the ones, Amity, that wanted the why, right? Well, what's the precedence for this, right? Like, no, we just can't go do this.
My
You
husband.
need to give me the rationale.
When I ask him a question, sometimes I have to be like, okay, and I only want one sentence answer. Right? I don't need the whole background of how it all works, right? So we figured out a way to communicate it our ways. But yes.
Yeah. So that's so for your listeners, that would be a really easy tool that helps people to start to think about how to meet people where they are. Right? It's like, what do I notice about the people around me, right? What behaviors, what cues am I picking up from them in terms of how they want information, how they seem to be responding, right? So that's one tool that I love to use. And then again, right, that is coupled with our own level of self-awareness of like yourself. You gave a great example. I'm aware that I am very driven. Right? It's just like, we've got a task to do. Like, why are we sitting around? Let's move, right? But what I love is what you said is I consciously worked on that. And again, neither good nor bad. It's really about us learning how to accept everyone and then create an environment of inclusion, right? Because ultimately, accepting people for who they are and their differences is about creating an inclusive and safe environment. And then that's also a very important aspect of leadership that we talk about a lot now, is creating a level of psychological safety within the workplace.
Like the open door policy type things?
Yes, and Amity, it would also mean that people can feel like they can bring their whole selves to work, right? So I'll give you an example. When I was working as a pharmacist, you'll appreciate this. When we worked at night in the dispensary, we could bring music in, right? Because at night it's less staff. We're just kind of working away like little bees in the dispensary. So I would bring my music in, and at the time, I was listening to The Cure. And there were people in the department that were like, what is this? Like, it sounds like something people would listen to when they're like smoking drugs, right? And it's like, it's a band called The Cure, and they're actually fairly well known. Right? It's like
very famous.
But I would be judged because that wasn't the type of music that the
100%
felt was cool, right? Or interesting, right? They just thought it was weird, right? Because it's like, I would listen to a lot of what was termed at the time alternative music, right? Like, listening, I'm a child of the 80s, right? The Smiths, right? Like, the House Martins, right? These are all like bands that were maybe not the mainstream, right? That were being played constantly on the radio. So people would be like, oh my God, what is that? It's like, but having a safe, psychologically safe environment means I can express myself. I can bring my whole self, and in conflict, right? If I had a different opinion or idea to something that somebody else proposed, I would feel safe being able to say, you know what, Amity, I'm actually not sure that that's going to be the right way to go. And here's what I'm thinking. Right? But how many times in the workplace do we, when the most senior person is there, we clam up, right? It's like, I better not say anything because the boss is there, right? And the boss said X, right? Even though I think it's not going to work, I got to know what the boss says, because God knows I'll get fired if I say anything against him, right? Or her.
That can also be a company's downfall. It can be.
Absolutely, right? Look at Blockbuster and Netflix, right? Blockbuster had the opportunity to, right, provide venture capital, Netflix, and they said, oh no, we don't do that. Yeah, good luck with that, right? So we know what happened there, right?
Yeah, yep. And if someone else had seen it a different way and had said something or convinced them, or, who knows how it would have turned out. But I see what you mean, that safe space to bring ideas. And again, back to that point of no one person knows everything, even if they're the CEO of the largest company. Everybody has other people for advice. And, I always talked about, like, I would pair myself with people that were strong at the things that I had opportunities to improve in those areas. And so I would partner. I was never the biggest marketer, merchandiser, great at that. And I would always partner myself with people where that was their big strength. So it's like a nice, like, we could function, as a really great person, or even a team of 3 or 4, because we had all of the pieces between all of us, right? I don't feel like any one person can do everything. Although in this day and age, we're all trying, right?
Yeah. I think that, and I think too, right? That I think is a great distinction, Amity, between being a collective versus being a collaborative, right? You're collaborating because you're really seeing the strengths and abilities that people have, leveraging those. And I think that's also, something that leaders do, effective leaders do, right? Is they facilitate, right? You don't have to have all the answers, but what you become skilled at is putting the right people into the right places, right? And
yes, that's
and
exactly
leveraging that so that you really then hum, right, as a machine, right? It's just like, how do I get this machine, right, humming in a way that's really effective, right, and efficient, right? And that's how we do it, right? Is we use that ability to see those talents of others, put them into the right places, and then that actually increases their level of satisfaction and motivation, right? It's like, oh my God, I love my job, right? Because I get to do the stuff that I do well. And I think to what you're saying is what's important for us as leaders is to let go of ego, right? It's like you said, I'm not a marketer, right? That's not my wheelhouse.
Not my strength.
That's not a lane I'm going to get into, and I'm fine if I let somebody else do it.
Well, I'm a big proponent of, instead of spending so much time trying to make your areas of opportunity stronger, play to your strengths. Because then you're just wasting your strengths. Like, if you could just play to your strengths and then supplement in where you need to be and with their strengths, I feel like you're going to get a much stronger. I've always been that way. Yeah. I mean, of course, I'm always trying to learn about marketing and merchandising, but I'm always going to defer more to people who have better expertise on that. But one thing I just don't want to forget that you had said earlier was about the body language, right? Watching, that's how we meet and make sure we're communicating in the way that they need. So one piece of that, especially in this day and age, is how much is over text and email. So do you have any, I mean, other than adding like 5 little smiley face emojis or, something like that, what kind of strategies do you have there?
Well, I think, one of the things that and there's a really great book called that from Erica Dewan, called, digital, I can't remember, I'll find the title for you, but,
we'll put the link in the notes.
The one thing that I would say it can be really useful, particularly if it's a team, Amity, is setting some team norms. Right. So I'll give you an example. When I was working in pharmaceuticals, we would say, if you and I were partners in the same territory, if there was something really urgent, I'd pick up the phone and call you, right? Because as sales reps, we're working very autonomously, right? So I'd pick up the phone and call you. If it wasn't urgent and I needed an answer within 24 hours, I would leave you a voicemail on, and we all had like 1-800 number voicemail boxes.
Sure.
If it was something that didn't need immediate attention, it was like maybe a couple of days, I would send you an email. So I think one of the things is we can set norms in terms of level of urgency. If it's super urgent, text me. But I think it also becomes important for us to take the time to really understand context, right? If I'm a little confused by something, pick up the phone, right? Because I think now, isn't it funny? Phone is like the personal way to go, right? It used to be face to face, but now it's like, oh my God, if I'm picking up the phone and talking to you, that's personal, right? So I think it's the, really just making sure that, If I don't understand something, I'm clarifying it, right? I just got this text. I'm not really sure what you meant by it. Can I just check with you to see if I've understood this correctly? I think, in the virtual space, it's, again, setting some norms around that, understanding that in a virtual space, sometimes a camera off does not mean something catastrophic, right? It could be a number of reasons why that person might have their camera off, right? We are now more
good point. I forgot all
sensitive.
about those video
Yeah,
calls.
we are more sensitive to people that are on that neurodiversity spectrum, right? Where some of them find that way too much stimulation, right? So I think as a leader, we can be setting some norms around, hey, get it if you need to have your camera off. Just let us know, right? If you need to step away, right? Or, if you just need that break, right? Giving people permission, right? But really trying to, I think, be as transparent as possible. So I love, in the virtual space, if people say, oh, I need to step away for a moment, or sorry, I had my camera off because, I've got a bad cold and I'm blowing my nose every 10 seconds, right? Or got to, step to the door. That's actually sort of demonstrating respect and courtesy for the people around you, right? I know email can be challenging, right? So what I find, I think, is useful is to really think about what's the key message that I'm trying to distill in this email. And I often find I'll go back to an email a couple of times before I even send it, right? I might, say to my husband, can you read this and ask me if it's clear, right? If it's not, tell me what's not clear about it, right? I even do that with my newsletters, right? Where I write them and then I go, I take out words. And I think it is about, less is more, right? Keeping it concise. Or I think sometimes bullet point, I like bullets myself, right? Particularly if there's, something very specific that we're talking about, I like to bullet point things. And I would also say too, Abby, it's the rule of 3. Generally the frontal, the front part of our brain that's responsible for front executive function, the prefrontal cortex, can't hold more than 3 to 5 pieces of information. So in an email, right, we don't want to go on about the 8 different things that we need to do, right? I need to boil it down to some very tight, concise points. Make it easy for people, right? And at the same time, let's think about meeting people where they are. Because if I have somebody who, if I go back to DISC, is an I, they probably wouldn't like it if I launched right into something, but I might say, hey, Amity, how's it going? How's your week been? Hope this finds you well. Why don't you just cover off a couple of things from our last meeting, right? Versus like, you probably don't mind if it's just like, hey, Amity, great meeting. Here's the things I took away, right? Like, so
not even that. It's something with my mom all the time. I'll just walk into the house and go, when I'm visiting her and go start doing whatever. And she's like, did you say hi to this person? Did you say hi to this person? Like, well, I'm not talking to them. So no. So I know exactly what you're saying. Like she wants the pleasantries. And I'm like, well, I'm going to do what we talked about. So, yep. You're absolutely right. Yeah, just come at me.
Yeah. So those are some of the things that I would suggest as like just little, tips and points to think about in communication.
Even me right now, I worry about it so much in the professional life. You just pointed out, well, I'm completely ignoring it, or not ignoring it, but like it's not something I'm focusing on and working on in my personal life, at least with my parents or anything. You just pointed out. So always work to do, or always progress to be made. So
absolutely, right. We are works in progress. And again, right, I think one of the other things to think about is that, I know a lot of times, my clients will say, well, I have no idea how to figure that out. It's like, just follow their lead, right? It's kind of like when you're dancing with somebody, right? Just kind of follow their lead as to, I'm noticing that when they communicate with me, they like to kind of have a little bit of small talk, right? Or this person just kind of likes to get to the point, right? Or this person really likes data, right? So that's where we can, again, be a bit of a detective to say, what are they trying to tell me about what they want?
Yep. Very, very good point. Sometimes when I'm so used to being just that like in emails, very much just like go right into it, right? Not even like a dear whoever or hi or whatever. And then I'll get an email back that's like, hello, Amity, and a paragraph. And then sincerely, blah, blah. I'm like, what's wrong? What did I do? Right? Almost the opposite way. Why is it so formal all of a sudden? Oh boy. Oh, email. So this is just find meaning in everything. Well, I mean, and I've been in, management leadership for how long and still learning everything. I mean, still learn things today. So we're definitely going to have things that resonate with the listeners for sure. All of the things that you mentioned or that I mentioned, we will put in the show notes along with links on how to reach you and everything. But I just want to give you a chance real quick as we wrap up to let us know, like, what exactly, like, different kind of package services do you offer, and how can, or what's the process for people to get working with you?
Yeah, well, thank you for giving me some space to chat about that. So what I'm really excited about, Amity, is I am going to be launching a program in the fall, and it's a leadership accelerator program. So it's really about helping people that are really wanting to move into leadership, or just maybe new-ish to leadership. Just an opportunity for them to really accelerate their pace at which they can get results, right, as leaders.
Yeah.
So really excited about doing that. That's going to be a 6-month program that I'm going to be launching out, small cohort, just because I think, we have those smaller groups, there's going to be really powerful learning that comes from people being in community with one another. And as you said, right, everybody's different, right? So what a great opportunity to learn from different styles and different backgrounds. So that's happening. And typically, when I work with clients one-on-one, usually it's a 6-month package where we have coaching, a couple of coaching calls per month, and then unlimited support in between. I like to make sure that my clients get the opportunity to just reach out whenever they need to, whether that be a phone call, text, email. Just started using a great new app called Marco Polo. So that's kind of like an just in time kind of thing where people can just say, help, I've got this presentation tomorrow, or I've got a difficult conversation that's coming up on, performance management with a team member. Can we chat for 15 minutes, right? So, really giving people very comprehensive support for that. And then I also do customized work as well. So if people have, specific training or learning and development needs, happy to design something with people as well, because I have lots of experience working with leaders through development programs. And so I'm happy to customize something, build some assessments in there, and work with them on whatever their needs are.
Nice. I could definitely see the beauty or the benefit of working in a small cohort like this group program that you're going to be launching, just because in a one-on-one, obviously there's a million benefits there too, but sometimes you might feel like, oh, well, I can't do this, or why is it this? And then when you're in a group, you realize, hey, they're going through the same thing, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not actually alone. This is how they're doing it, or you have other ideas. So I love that you're doing a group one, that you're opening that up. And then just in general, I love that this is a thing, a leadership coaching program, because I've been so lucky when I was in corporate to be with large corporations that have in-house training and development and leadership and management programs, but that's not the norm. That is not the norm, especially if you're in your own company that's growing. I mean, what are you going to do? So, or you want to grow in a company and they don't have that coaching, but or you're one of those that doesn't necessarily have those skills and you've been promoted, or any of those things. So I love that that's an option for the majority of the companies that aren't going to have that. And you're only going to improve your own career and your own self by doing that, even if the company is not offering that. So I love that. Okay, so we'll definitely have links to that as well. And most importantly, that one-on-one customized one, because there are some really unique things out there that aren't going to fit in a regular, coaching program. And all the coaching programs that you generally see advertised or whatever out there, it's always like, come, 300 people for my pre-recorded sessions, well, maybe that's not exactly the pre-recorded stuff that I needed. So it's nice that you're willing to customize and work with exactly what a person needs to get them there. So that's just I just related it to what I do with the custom jewelry, right? It's not the masses they're finding out there in, Shane, K's, whatever. They're not finding it. And that's what's out there for the masses. So, well, let's do something custom that puts your story in there, or your meanings, or your interests. So it's kind of the same thing.
Absolutely, right. I mean, when I got married, I had a customized ring, and I used a design that a girlfriend of mine had. You'll appreciate this. It was a vintage design in white gold. It was like from the 40s. So it's a really cool little basket design with the diamond set on top, and then
I love that you went custom.
Yeah,
that's great. That's great. So many people don't even know that custom is really an option. So that's really cool. Okay, well then now I'm going to have to ask for a picture of the ring to put in the notes as well.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Since we talked about it. Okay. Well, definitely. Okay. So I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you, Lisa. I really, really enjoyed our conversation. We hit on a lot of really cool points, and I'm glad that we got to focus more on the career aspect for our listeners now that we've been working on self for so many weeks. So I'm going to put everything that you said or anything we talked about in the show notes with links so everybody can get in touch and find you and your courses and your offerings and your, and email you. Everyone, listeners, please follow, like, subscribe, all the things. There is, like I always say, I know there's something that we talked about in this podcast today that resonates with you or someone you know. So share it with them. Share it with them. We'll all move up faster. We'll grow. We'll be able to keep doing this stuff and providing amazing free advice from experts in the field if we can do that for one another. So thank you all so much for being here. Again, thank you, Lisa. And we'll see you at the next episode. Bye, everyone.